The subject matter is collateral-based loans, specifically the mechanics of securing a loan against crypto holdings without touching the underlying position. That's the model I've been working with. And today, I'll break down how the system works, why the liquidity it provides is structurally different from anything an exchange is designed to offer, and before I close out, I'll go through what my current evaluation process looks like before I commit to any new platform. And before I open the interface, let me just give you an honest read on what regular youth actually revealed about the system. Because 2 months is a specific choice. It's long enough that the initial experience becomes irrelevant, and you're left with the baseline of how something actually performs day in, day out. And across that stretch, a few things stood out consistently. That trifecta: reliable execution, substantive documentation, real support. I've tested enough platforms to know that it's a higher bar than it sounds. Most crack somewhere in it. This one didn't. Alright, here's the setup interface, and everything that defines the loan gets configured in this single view. The first input is the collateral token, and right away the asset list here is worth a mention. ETH, BTC, TRX, SOL, the assets that form the actual backbone of market activity, with deep liquidity and established price history behind each of them. And practically, I'm not forced to move capital around before I can do anything here. I'm working with positions I already hold, and the range gives me enough optionality to adapt if market conditions change while I'm mid-setup. Okay, next I put in the collateral amount. Yeah, that's the figure. Next, the borrow asset. I'll take ETH this time. Then I'm setting the loan term. And then I configure LTV. So LTV is the one I want to be deliberate about explaining here, because it's genuinely the hinge point of the entire setup. It's the ratio between the borrowed amount and the value of the collateral backing it, and every asset has a defined upper boundary on how far that ratio can stretch. What makes this consequential is the enforcement mechanism. If the collateral depreciates enough to push the ratio beyond that boundary, the platform liquidates the position automatically to recover the loan. No alert, no grace period, no window to intervene manually. So when I'm landing on this number, the question running through my head is, what does a realistic downside scenario look like given where the market currently stands? The instinct to maximize the loan amount is exactly the wrong instinct here. The right frame is, how do I keep this position intact if the market moves meaningfully against me? Okay, I hit proceed and move to the next step. So the very first thing I do here is save my contract ID. That's the access point back into this loan for its entire duration. Then I need to make a transaction from my end. There's a wallet connect path that handles this step automatically, but I'm taking the manual route. Good. Transaction is on the network. Platform registers it. Once the confirmation comes through, all right, confirmation received, and this screen shows full contract summary. Rate, term, exact figures, everything that governs this loan from here. Yeah, every detail is precisely as configured. So next, I enter my receiving address for ETH. Good. So now I'm watching for the incoming balance. All right, platform executed its obligations under the contract cleanly, balance updated, and the screen I'm on right now, I want to make sure this part lands because it's central to how the system works in practice. This is the loan dashboard, and I access it using the contract ID I saved earlier. For as long as this loan is active, this is where I manage it, monitoring the position, responding to what the market does, making whatever adjustments the situation calls for. So now I want to step away from the interface for a minute here and explain the logic of what this model is doing, because I think it's one of those concepts where the name sounds more intimidating than the reality. And once the underlying mechanic is clear, the case for it basically makes itself. The structure is this. I put tokens into a smart contract as collateral, locked in there for the duration, not accessible to anyone, and the platform issues a loan in a different asset against that value. And what stays completely unchanged is my original position. The tokens are still mine. I haven't sold anything. I haven't reduced my market exposure. I'm still entirely in that asset and still exposed to wherever it moves. When the loan runs its course and I repay, the collateral is returned. This is a fundamentally different answer to the question of how to use long-term holdings productively without surrendering them. The environmental factor that compounds this is the sheer rate at which the space moves. New chains, new protocols, new platform categories entering the market in rapid succession. And that constant influx of new things creates a backdrop where distinguishing legitimate from illegitimate requires active effort rather than passive observation. The vulnerable point isn't carelessness, it's the decision that gets made in that gap between encountering something and having enough context to actually evaluate it. I've made decisions in that gap that I wouldn't make today. The approach I use now was built around plugging exactly those holes, and I'll go through the specifics of it before I finish up.